Hello, everybody. My name is Karl Ryan, and as it says right here, I'm a manager in a team called the Global Expansion Team. And what we do primarily is we work with you. We work with your account managers to help you internationalize, to export, to move to new markets. We size opportunities, and we also help with the actual building of campaigns in multilingual languages. And so what I'm going to talk to you right now about is the other part of what I'm passionate about and what I love to work on here at Google, which is export tools. So we have a whole host of amazing, free, completely free tools for you to use to kickstart export journeys, to kickstart internationalization thinking for yourselves. Some of you are already on that journey, I know. So some of these may be things to help you in another phase of the journey, and some of them are maybe just to kickstart ideas in the first place. So I'm going to take you through a few of those tools fairly rapidly, but just to give you a flavor of them. And then my colleague Sergei from the Moscow office is here, and he'll take you then into a little bit more detail in terms of looking at emerging markets, and specifically then a bit of a deeper dive on Russia as a potential market to go into. So let me start by just, you've probably seen some of these stats already over the last day and a half. But just to give you that context, there's 2 billion, actually there's 2 billion plus people online globally. There's another 5 billion we're looking to get on there. But what's more interesting from your perspective is that 1 in 3 would buy from abroad if products or services were cheaper or better. That's a pretty staggering and interesting statistic. And all the more interesting then if you could find some interesting tools to leverage that as well. So obviously in the past we've had obvious things that have limited us as exporters, right? In the past the cost was so punitive in terms of actually getting products out there into the world, actually researching, setting up new offices sometimes in new countries. It just wasn't possible within the limits of what budgets we would be working with. Indeed, also time, and the time cost to everybody was a big problem in the past, as well as that kind of uncertainty factor. I actually don't know what it's like to go into that country until I actually go there. But now with Google we can help you with all of those things. And there's less cost and less time and less uncertainty. Let me show you how. So this is kind of the different areas that the tools are going to kind of cover. So looking for sales opportunities. We're going to look at how to communicate in other languages. I'm going to show you as well just little things, thoughts around unique local strategies. So thinking local while you're going global, yeah. And then also just that idea of how you're going to reach those new customers. So, excuse me. Okay, so first I'm going to share with you a couple of tools here, and I'm going to ask my colleague Stefano from the Global Expansion Team to come up, and we're going to do a bit of a live demo on a few of them. So the first one I'm going to show you is Global Market Finder. Has anybody here ever seen or used the Global Market Finder? Yes, brilliant, top of the class, fantastic. Okay, for those of you who haven't, I'm going to show you very quickly how this works. So if we could go over to the live demo, yeah, super. So up in the top left corner here, you can see you'll pick your own location. So let's pick Ireland, Stefano, just seeing as we're in Ireland today. And obviously you pick your language. The reason you're going to do this is because you're going to enter keywords into this central box. And just so you know, this technology is built upon two of our most powerful technologies that we have at Google. It's built on the keyword tool, and it's built on our Google translation technology. And the combination of those two is quite powerful, and you'll see why in a minute. What it's going to do is we're going to put in some keywords here now in our own language, and real time it'll translate them and then input those into the keyword tool across multiple markets of our choosing to see what are the kind of search volumes and what are the kind of CPCs you'd expect to pay in those markets for those keywords. So I was at a wedding last week, so I figure wedding dress and wedding dresses are what we're going to go for. Are we okay with that, Stefano? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So wedding dress, wedding dresses. And then, as you'll see here in this excuse me, top right corner, we can filter it by picking what kind of countries, regions we want to look at. So let's look at Europe, seeing as we are all Europeans here today. And then we have to prove we're not a robot. I am not a robot. Okay, let's see. We may have to do this again because the tab has been open for a little while. Yes, unfortunately. Okay, we'll try that again. Great. As you can see, it's pretty instant. And what we now see is Those keywords have been translated. So if you Stefano, wouldn't mind just clicking on the plus sign on Poland there, just to show. And then if you click Polish, you can just see the words translated into Polish. Yeah, give it a click there. Is anybody a Polish speaker here? Yes? No? Do we know if the translation's perfect? Yeah, it's good. Okay, great. Hooray. So also interestingly here, so you're looking at then search volumes on a monthly basis, and you're looking at kind of average CPCs, and then you can see this blue bar is giving you kind of a sense of what the level of competition is there. Obviously, you're not going to found an entire export strategy based on using this tool, but it's going to give you a good flavor and a good starting point of where you should be thinking and how you should be thinking with your top kind of keywords. Let's have a look at one other example. Maybe could you click open Germany there, Stefano, and we'll just have a quick look at that. So here as well, you'll see it's also looking at the niche languages that are being searched in that country as well. So for wedding dress and wedding dresses, now very small volumes we're looking at here, but you're still talking about English, it's coming up being searched, and Polish and Russian in this case as well. So it'll sometimes tell you and give you an indicator of what kind of ethnic groups are actually searching for those terminology and those keywords in those countries as well. So it's an interesting one in terms of tailoring your strategy as well. So that's the global market finder. I'm going to show you another tool now. If we can just go to the consumer barometer there, Stefano. Great. Has anybody seen or used the consumer barometer before? Great, a couple of you. Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. So for those of you who haven't, this is a pretty cool and really powerful piece of data, really, that we've compiled in conjunction with the IAB, the International Advertising Bureau. There was a survey sent out globally to assess consumers' online and offline purchasing behavior. And so that data was then collated. So this is pretty recent data. I think it was updated at the end of Q1. And it was an attempt to assess just different purchasing patterns, how they research online, purchase offline, etc. So what we'll do is, Stefano, would you just go to the browse functionality? I won't be able to show you all of it, but I'll just show you this. And then perhaps we'll go on the shopping cart there, which is how do consumers research and purchase products. Excuse me again. So you'll see this kind of nifty, kind of bubble graph here. And what we can do now is we can start to filter down some of this information. So let's pop over to Europe in the left-hand menu there, Stefano, if you wouldn't mind. And let's pick Denmark, just randomly. And what it's now going to do is give us an option to filter it by vertical. So obviously retail would be a good one to start with today. And let's look at books. Yeah, let's look at books. So what it's now going to do is give us, taking that data and those kind of questionnaires that were sent out, it's going to compare Denmark with another country. You could obviously compare it with your own country, or if you were going into the Nordics, you could compare two Nordic countries. And you can see up here in the top right, there's two little drop-downs, so you can pick the countries you want to compare in that. And actually, Stefano, if you wouldn't mind just kind of hovering over bits and pieces of the graph, you can see that it's interactive in that they sort of select different parts of the question, so you can see what relates to what there. And even down here in the drop down here, you can actually look at different types of filters in terms of questions as well. If you want to just select one of those, most important in driving final purchase decision, and it gives you different kinds of statistics here. What's nice about that is it's pretty clean and easy to look at. It's also downloadable and shareable, and you can put it in presentations, etc. I won't have time to show you. Yes, thanks. There's the download button, the all important. I won't have time to show you, but you can see up there, there's a graph up in the top right. There's a button there for a graph. That's just another way of representing the data. You can do bar graphs in terms of just comparing different types of purchasing and research behavior as well. Well worth a look. Take some time to play with it. It's super cool, and there's super loads of data in there as well. And again, it's free and it's for you to use. So that's the consumer barometer. And then the last one I'm going to demo for you is our mobile planet. Has everybody seen this? Has anybody used this one? No? We have one. Fantastic. There's always a couple. Great. So our mobile planet is ostensibly a kind of a consumer barometer, but a bit more narrowed down into focusing on mobile behavior. So there's a lot of statistics around smartphone penetration, smartphone usage, statistics, data, all of that kind of stuff around how that is done. And you can create your own customizable charts, downloadable, of course, etc. And what's one nice feature is, Stefano, if you wouldn't mind just going down to just click on that one there. There's pre-made PDF slide decks for a whole host of countries here. And what's nice is they're in both English and the native language of the country. And as well as that, the full data set is available as well in Excel. So you can pull that data and manipulate it yourself for your own graphs and for your own presentations, which is pretty cool. And actually, why don't we just have a quick look at one of them, Stefano, if you wouldn't mind just pressing, I don't know, let's look at Brazil English, the PDF there, just so you can get a sense of what it looks like. And what we've got here then, if we just scroll down ever so slowly, just kind of a top-line summary of kind of statistics of smartphone penetration and usage in Brazil, and then we'll just fly on just real quick. We can just have a quick look at a few other slides. This kind of stuff here, where we've got, we'll just move on, keep going. I just want to give a quick look at maybe one or two of the other slides. So these kind of larger figures and statistics, and it is again updated as recently as Q1 of this year. So anyway, worth a look, and please play around with it, and you can customize those types of decks as well yourself. So if we can go back to the presentation itself now, that would be great, and thank you very much, Stefano, for taking the time to demo those with us. So that's the Global Market Finder I showed you. I showed you the Consumer Barometer, and I also just showed you our mobile planet. I have a couple other ones I wanted to tell you about. So the translation technology is an amazing technology in many ways. And one of the interesting things that challenges that customers I've worked with have faced is sometimes that prohibitive cost of translating the website. It's a large undertaking, and it also is one that can be quite costly. So one thing that we sometimes suggest, and this is maybe an idea for you if you're thinking about testing the waters in a new market, but you're not sure if you want to invest the full amount into actually fully translating your website. The Google Translate plugin, you've probably all come across it, you probably just don't realize. You know when you go and search on Google and you come to a site and that little drop-down bar goes, this page is in French, do you want to read it in your own language? That's the Translate plugin. That's the prompt version. There's another version where sometimes you'll see this on a site at the top. There's kind of a drop-down menu where you will click it and select the language you want to read the website in. That's all customizable on the back end for your webmaster, where you can choose the languages, and I think we've over 52 languages to choose from. Obviously, there's a huge wealth of them there, and you can make those choices yourself. You can use all of them or just some of them. In this case, this is just an example of where we feel that sometimes it's a way of setting up a site where you have maybe one section of it where you thought, okay, let me test out this part of my retail site in Spanish. And so you've got a suite of products, and you say, I'm going to put the plugin on that page, and I'm going to test that page dynamically, see how it works in Spanish. Complement that then with an AdWords campaign in Spanish. And what you can use is also another extension of the translation technology is the Google Translate Toolkit. And here you can take an AdWords campaign in your native tongue, drop it in as an AdWords editor file into the toolkit. It will translate it into the target language you want. So let's say you set up a small campaign targeting that page that you just set up with your Translate plugin, and then you have a ready-to-go little campaign that's targeting in Spanish, in this example, to a Spanish section of your site. You can see maybe if conversions are starting to happen for you in that target language. While it isn't perfect, it's an interesting way to get started, and it's an interesting one to think about as a possibility. One or two caveats, of course. With the Translate technology, it isn't perfect. Nothing beats a human localization, not even just translation. You need that local perspective. But it doesn't also obviously translate images, so be conscious of images that contain text or Flash for that matter. Also, when it comes to translating the ads, you've obviously got the standard limitations of not having a human person take care of the actual localization component, so some character limits might be impeded given the translation from one language to another, so you would have to keep an eye on that. And also, of course, the general imperfections that might happen in syntax or grammar occasionally could be impacted there. But generally, the cool thing about the translation technology is it's always learning. There's a huge amount of human input. So one of the really cool features about the Translate plugin is that If a user spots a mistake, syntactical, grammatical, or even just spelling linguistic, they can hover over it, a little box will pop up, they can type in the corrected form of it, which will be sent to your webmaster who can approve or deny whether they want to accept that. That learning then goes into the bigger knowledge brain of the translation technology, and so it is always improving. And obviously there's major languages like Spanish and English and Chinese which are improving at a more rapid pace because of simply the use of those languages. Anyway, it's an interesting thought and they're interesting tools. Even if you don't choose to use them in the way I just explained, Translate Toolkit is super cool because you can also just drop any document into it and it will translate. You can put in Word docs and Excels and etc. and HTML for that matter. So the only other caveat I would say as well about the plugin is it's dynamic translation. So that page is not searchable by users on Google or any other search engine for that matter. But what you can do as another option, and if anybody's interested in it, I can talk to you after this, I'm around, is a thing called the Translate API, which is a small cost where you can translate a bulk volume of your HTML pages, cache them, create a URL that will direct to them as well. But I'm happy to talk about that later. I don't have a slide on that, but if anyone's interested, I'm happy to do so. Okay. So these are just some thoughts. These are common questions that I get from a lot of the customers that I work with. While I can't give you exact specifics of who you should work with or what you should do, these are obvious things that you need to consider when entering any new market. I know these sound like common sense, but they aren't always common practice, and that's why we always highlight them as well at this point in this session. But just keep in mind those kind of things like preferred payment methods. I only just learned the other day that there's a very specific kind of a transfer method in the Netherlands that's quite popular. So I understand that every country might have its own local specifics that are very popular there. So please keep those in mind. It might be the difference between making a conversion or not. Shipping and logistics, obviously, and custom taxes and duties, those are kind of things that need to be very carefully scrutinized, obviously, as much as insurance legal. Customer support we put down there. It's one of those ones that actually, I know it sounds like a no-brainer, but also that idea of actually providing customer support in the native tongue, in the native hours, showing people when you're available to talk to them is a huge part of actually making those sales and making those conversions. Okay. That's pretty much all from me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to Sergei, who's going to take you through a little bit of the more specifics in terms of looking at emerging markets, and then also he's going to take you into deeper dive into Russia. And then maybe we'll just leave a bit of time at the end for both myself and Sergei to take any questions. So I'm happy to take questions on any of those tools or anything like that at the end of Sergei's session. So I'll hand over to Sergei now. Thanks.
Thank you, Karl. Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. Well, I guess it's somewhat unexpected to see a slide with an old map like this from someone coming from Google. But in fact, this is the map of the Eastern Telegraph Company that depicts the chart of submarine telegraph cable routes. And that pretty much shows the global reach of telecommunications at the beginning of the 20th century. In fact, very few people had a chance to connect and communicate over long distances. Now connectivity is everywhere. It takes almost no effort for people to transfer goods, services, or information. Borders and barriers as we once knew them are effectively gone. And back in the old days, people could only dream of the business opportunities that we have at the moment. But as in every business, you need to have the right tools and knowledge in order to be successful. And today, I will humbly share with you some of the findings and insights that we have. Most of the time when people think about moving to new audiences, they think about moving to new countries. But then large and relevant audiences don't always have to be far away. Sometimes the solution you're looking for might be right in front of your face. It is important to think about the many niche language opportunities that exist in various countries. Take an example of 2 million Turkish speakers living in Germany. So in order to target those people, you can copy a Turkish campaign or indeed create a brand new campaign. Another fact to think about is that certain languages can have a massive, profound impact almost instantly. Consider the fact that Spanish is the first language for almost 5% of the world's population. And indeed, the Hispanic population in the US is 50 million people now. So this is a niche language with huge potential. The US Hispanic buying power is estimated to reach, just think about this number, 1.48 trillion US dollars by 2015. This is important because a large part of the global GDP growth will come not only from emerging markets, but from emerging cities. Just 440 out of the largest cities in emerging markets will provide almost half of the global GDP growth in the next 13 years. A more granular approach can help you be more effective when targeting those audiences. For instance, in Chinese cities, some of which are economically larger than the entire European markets. It's not really traffic that buys your products, it's people. So you need to tailor your entry model accordingly, and don't be fooled by generalities because, for instance, talking about Chinese consumers and the way they shop is like talking about European consumers. And I'm going to give you an example of two Chinese cities, Shenzhen and Guangzhou. Both cities are tier 1 cities, both are located in the same province, and just a couple of hours apart from each other. Guangzhou's residents mainly speak Cantonese, mostly locally born, and they prefer to spend their spare time with their friends and families. On the contrary, Shenzhen's people, 80% of them at least, are young migrants from all over the country. They mainly speak Mandarin, and most of their time is spent actually away from their friends and families. So in order to be effective, marketers will need to target those two groups separately, and that is why we recommend to manage them in different clusters, despite their proximity. When you think about expanding, don't just think in terms of new geographies or languages. It is important to think about expanding to new platforms. Consumers are staying extremely connected nowadays, and cross-platform media consumption is a large new trend. And just think about yourself and how many times in the last couple of days you have used several devices at once. For instance, while you're watching TV, and at the same time tweeted something on the phone, searched something on the web, or watched a YouTube video. And these are all opportunities to monetize, of course. And just to give you a quick snapshot, smartphone and tablet usage is continuing to explode. So if you don't have a sound mobile strategy in place, it means that very soon you are going to get left behind. I'll give you an example of India. With only 7% of its population currently being connected, which is roughly 81 million people, India is considered to be Asia's digital sleeper. But at Google, we strongly believe that the country is poised to become a true mobile internet society in just a few years. And indeed, it is estimated that by 2015, the number of internet users in India will increase almost fivefold and will reach 350 million people. And what's even more interesting is that almost half of those people will be accessing the web through their mobile devices. When you think about consumers, be it on mobile, desktop, or tablet, you need to understand that they spend most of their time on content. In general, people spend only 5% of their time on search pages, searching for something, and then 95% of time on other sites. So you need to include the display strategy into your, expansion plans as well. And one of the key channels to leverage this is YouTube. YouTube is often overlooked as part of the global expansion strategy. But in some countries where TV's reach is not ubiquitous, like a number of Arabic countries, YouTube can actually give you a more direct and impactful way to reach your customers, to reach your audience, and to start communicating with it. So you've seen the trends and the tools that are leading the change in the digital space. Here at Google, we have the knowledge and tools to support your niche platform. So leverage your resources here and build your expert strategy with us. And now let's move to Russia. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of people here who heard some things about Russian online market, and perhaps it's booming e-commerce, but I guess very few know exactly what is going on in the country. So let's take a closer look. Despite the country's stable economic situation, Russian economy is still very much dependent on the export of its natural resources. So the three main export objects are remaining the same. It's oil, gas, and timber. There's limited industrial capacities when it comes to consumer goods manufacturing. Hence, there's this great demand for the foreign consumer goods. And a few quick stats on the country. In terms of its population size, Russia is country #1 in Europe and #9 globally. As of September of 2011, Russia has surpassed Germany and became the country with the largest online population in Europe as well. The internet penetration is relatively low as compared to the most developed markets. It's 50% now, but with the growth rate of 7% year on year, the situation is about to change for the better in the foreseeable future. There are 22 million online consumers, and this number is rapidly growing. And then Russians, of course, love their mobile devices. The mobile penetration in the country is one of the highest in the world and is at the level of 200%, which basically means that every person living in Russia has at least 2 mobile phone subscriptions. The smartphone penetration is a bit lagging behind and is at the level of 36%. There are 30K plus e-commerce players. This number, of course, is not limited to online retail only, but basically includes all of the online businesses, ranging from travel aggregators to food delivery services. And just to give you a quick perspective of where the Russian e-commerce currently stands, please take a look at the numbers provided by the eMarketer. Currently, the e-commerce volume in Russia is almost 22 times smaller than the one in the US. But then again, it's significantly lagging behind some of the most developed European markets, like the UK, Germany, and France. The estimated e-commerce volume this year is around $16–17 billion. So most of the researchers are unanimous in estimating this number. The breakaway indicated by a number of international players like Morgan Stanley and BCG is about to happen next year, and it grows even more in the next couple of years, ending with $43 billion and making the Russian e-commerce market one of the largest in the world. I guess the interesting thing about the estimations is that local players, on average, are more conservative when it comes to forecasting the market growth. I guess this happens mostly because the international players like Morgan Stanley and BCG are heavily relying on the previous experience in other markets, and such economic factors as the growth of the share of e-commerce in the overall retail volume and the expansion of broadband penetration. On the contrary, the local players understand that one of the key factors influencing the successful development of the industry is the state of the countrywide logistical infrastructure, which is yet, of course, to be improved. But we'll talk about this a bit later. One of the recent noticeable trends is the increase in cross-border sales from sites like Amazon and eBay and some other sites. Just this year alone, such prominent online retailers as ASOS and Shopbop localized their sites into Russian in order to make themselves more effective in targeting the Russian customers. Interestingly, China has become the most popular supply country, judging by the number of orders that were made by the Russian consumers on eBay last year. And just to give you another example of the cross-border sales acceleration, I'm going to give you an example of the company called Beirut.com. It is an Illinois-based operator that pretty much helps the Russian consumers to purchase and deliver goods from the US online stores to Russia. So the company has been named a 2013 Exporter of the Year award winner by Think Global Inc., which is the official export promotion magazine of the US Department of Commerce. So this is pretty amazing. Last year, the cross-border sales volume already reached 2 billion and is growing 100% year on year. But then things are not perfect, of course. Russia is one of Europe's most promising markets, but as you know, many Western companies are actually very reluctant to enter this market with huge potential due to the following reasons. It's the absence of warehousing possibilities, limited presence of delivery companies, absence of investments, and to some extent good people, and then there's pressing payments issues. About 80% of all online transactions made in Russia are finalized with the payment method of cash on delivery. So the Russians prefer not to pay with their credit cards when they make online orders. Okay, and to give you an example of how complicated things can actually get, I'm going to talk about the situation that happened in April of this year, when, as a result of the increased number of package shipments, mainly parcels from eBay and Amazon, up to 500 tons of packages were stuck at Moscow airports and Russian custom checkpoints. And the situation was resolved only after a few days, when it was heavily covered on the national TV and press. So this happened because the Russian customs could simply not handle the increased number of packages coming to Russia. So if you would really like to expand in Russia and set a foot in the country, it might be a good idea to take full control of your operations, starting from logistics to payments. A good example of this approach is the German Otto Group, which is considered to be the leader of online apparel sales in Russia. The company is reported to invest 50 million euros in the nearest future, actually, to improve its logistical settings, mainly warehousing. And by doing so, the company is planning to achieve 1 billion in sales volume in the next few years. And now, a little bit of geography. I'm pretty sure everybody knows that geographically wise, Russia is not an entirely European country. It lies in both Europe and Asia. And the border roughly lies along the Ural Mountains. I have marked it with the red line. The peculiar thing is that almost 80% of the country's population live in the western part, so namely before the Urals, and only 30 million in the east. And even the fact that out of the existing 15 cities with 1 million plus population in Russia are located in the west speaks for itself. In turn, this significantly influences the buying capacities of people living in different regions. In fact, there are three completely different situations. So there are capital cities, which is Moscow and St. Petersburg. There are cities with 1 million plus population, then there are low-density areas. And they have, as I said, different buying capacities, different logistical infrastructure and delivery, and even payment issues, and different expectations about products and services. Moscow and St. Petersburg are unique regions within Russia. Despite the two cities representing only 15% of the country's population, they also account for almost 60% of the online sales. Of course, due to higher broadband penetration, higher population density, higher household disposable income, and correspondingly more favorable postal and logistical infrastructure. So the Russian market is very locally oriented. If you want to expand in Russia, you need to be local because there's very little chance to scale your global operations. And it's not true only in relation to online retail. Russia is one of the few countries in the world where Google is not actually the leading search engine platform. It comes second right after Yandex. And Facebook is not the leading social media platform. It comes third after vk.com and odnoklassniki.ru. And then there's, of course, improving, albeit very slowly, infrastructural and payment issues. Thank you. And I think we're ready for questions.
Questions, yeah? Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Sergei or for myself on either of our presentations? We're happy to answer them. We've got some time. Yep. I think there's a microphone coming.
I'm interested in, just give you a bit of background. I work for a company called beautyfay.com. We are like luxury, kind of luxury branded retail. And we're obviously looking at, we ship worldwide, so we're in quite a few different countries. And a lot of chat about Poland, Russia, these countries that, you know, great search potential, loads of volume. But we found going into those markets, the sales don't really reflect the volume that there is. And I think that's probably an issue within the luxury sector. And obviously there's a lot of different retailers in this room with different value propositions. I'm just wondering whether you have any insight into where suits luxury, where suits value, where as a luxury retailer we should probably focus our efforts.
Well, I think in general, I wouldn't tell a lie if I say that the Russians love luxurious brands, and they're ready to buy those ones. I think it's actually a matter of whether they know you or not, your site, I mean. And another fact is that probably there are not a lot of people who are, well, if you take the whole population of Russia and even the number of online consumers who are buying things online in Russia, there's still a little percentage of people who actually try to find something and buy online from the foreign sites. I guess the situation will improve as more and more people are actually realizing the advantages of buying products on the foreign sites. But I guess it will improve. Well, it's hard to say when. I guess in the next few years, when as I said, logistical and delivery infrastructure becomes better. Because right now, I'll give you an example. I ordered something on Amazon, and then it was delivered to Russia in 2 days. And then I had to wait another 10 days for it to get delivered to me in Russia. I'm not sure if a lot of people are actually, ready to do that right now.
Any other questions from anybody? We've time if you'd like to ask questions. Yeah.
My question will be to Karl. So because I work for the Russian market, so Sergei is my boss. But
Okay.
I want to ask you a question about what are the biggest problems you have encountered, because you're an expert on export, and what are the biggest problems you have encountered when helping customers, move to different markets?
It varies, obviously, wildly from client to client because they have different sizes of operations. But a lot of the ones that I highlighted there are real challenges. So logistics, which Sergei has been talking about, has been a challenge depending on the market they want to go to. So a lot of it really comes down to that, if the infrastructure does or doesn't exist in the country. Also, with some countries, there might be huge opportunities there, but then there's also big problems around the taxation policies or even import duties and that kind of area, which is an area obviously we can't offer a huge amount of insight from a Google perspective, and that's something that they have to track down from their own side, or from a legal perspective from the governments themselves. So those are big challenges. I mean, there are huge amounts of challenges. Even that topic of translated websites genuinely is a question that's come up quite a lot, you know, because that is a big undertaking, especially from a retail perspective. You've got a massive inventory a lot of the time on your websites, and that will take time. So those are all challenges. But again, you know, unfortunately, my answer to you is ultimately it depends. There's loads of differences for every client and for every country that they want to go to. There's a question over there.
I work for a luxury cosmetics company, and obviously Russia is one of the territories that we're looking at. And it's the infrastructure piece that's the biggest challenge for us, because with 80% of payments being cash on delivery, that's a huge fraudulent risk and returns risk. Is there any data to say that percentage is shifting favourably to the e-commerce sort of providers' kind of preferred payments?
Well, yes, I'm actually talking to one of the largest Russian online retailers, which is Ozon.ru. It's pretty much the equivalent of Amazon. I would have to say that when I talked to them a couple of years back, they said that almost 85–90% of their orders were fulfilled with cash on delivery. So yes, there's a definite positive shift towards the payments with credit cards or other solutions like WebMoney, for instance. But it's still taking a lot of time. So I wouldn't really expect the situation to change drastically in the next couple of years at least.
Question down here. Yep, you. Yeah. There's a microphone on the way. Sure.
Yeah, you talked about the tool about translating websites, and I was wondering about the quality score issue, because you said the translation is dynamic. So does Google recognize if, for example, we use an English ad and we go to a Spanish website, does Google recognize that because the language is not the same as the ad, basically? So is there an issue there? Or?
The short answer is yes, of course. It would notice that there's a different language going to a different page. But then again, with the Translate plugin, you don't have to have it as the automatic prompt to change. You can have that as an optional menu as well. So if it's then going to the English language page or whatever your original source language is, then you give that user the option to actually select the language when they get to the page, as opposed to it being bounced to a page that's in a new language. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so the quality score won't be penalized?
So if you're going to a different language, it's obviously it's a challenge, yeah. But then that's why I was offering also the option of the Translate Toolkit, because then you could actually create an ad in the new language, the target language, to direct to the new target language page as well.
All right.
Yep. Any other questions? All happy? Yeah? Great. Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks very much from me. And
thank you very much.
thank you.